I just think everybody that tries to speak about the fragility of the US and worldwide banking system is right. And that part I think is quite lucid and unemotional. But every time they try to connect it to Bitcoin, they sound like a crazy person because they're just talking their book. If Bitcoin or crypto assets in general were truly a legitimate off-ramp and salvation from US dollar hegemony and all of this stuff, why isn't Bitcoin at least at 35,000 a coin right now? It's barely above 28,000. It really hasn't moved that much. And I think the real answer is that most people in Bitcoin are not trying to hedge their existing fiat currency exposure. They're just picking off people in retail. And they're just day trading this thing. How else do you explain an asset that is not absolutely ripped in the face of all of this terrible news about the financial system? And I think the answer is because it's still a cul-de-sac of users. It's not broadly available, not broadly adoptable.
Billionaire venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya recently shared his thoughts on Bitcoin and its potential as a legitimate alternative to the current financial system. In an episode of the All In podcast, Palihapitiya highlighted the relatively small number of Bitcoin users worldwide as an indication that most people do not view it as a viable substitute for the global banking system. He also expressed surprise that the price of Bitcoin has not risen higher if it truly addressed concerns over the dominance of the US dollar and banking stability. The value of Bitcoin has fluctuated significantly, with it being worth $19,662 on March 10th, the day of Silicon Valley Bank's collapse, and currently trading at around $28,207. Palihapitiya also criticized the Federal Reserve's decision to raise interest rates by 25 basis points amid the crisis in the U.S. financial system, stating that it was the worst thing they could have done. He believes that the Fed lacks the necessary tools to handle inflation running rampant, and their ambivalence to raise interest rates could ultimately harm the economy. Currently, the Fed funds rate stands at 4.5% to 4.75%. Palihapitiya says that the Fed's ambivalence to take interest rates higher could actually hurt the economy. Transparency in the Fed's decision-making process has been criticized by Palihapitiya, who argues that the winners and losers of their policies reflect broader concerns about the impact of government policies on the economy. Before proceeding further in this video, make sure to click on the subscribe button below to stay updated with our latest content.
But the reason that we print so much money is sort of what Freeberg says, which is that we just want a well-functioning society. And the simplest and shortest way to do that is to make sure that there aren't any winners and losers anymore. And the most effective way to do that in the markets is with money. Print a bunch of money and there are no more winners and losers. And so everybody can kind of win. Some people may win more, but nobody really ever loses. So I think that's the MO that we're operating under.
No losers.
That's a more philosophical and a commentary on capitalism and a bunch of other things. And you're right. I don't think it makes sense. I do think you need winners and losers to really make society function well. But the other part of it is like, does it reinforce or does it decay US dollar hegemony? And I think it actually reinforces it. And the reason is just very practically speaking, when you look at how dependent other people, other countries are on the US dollar, in times of stress, they actually become more dependent. And that has a lot to do with their borrowing patterns, the amount of dollars central banks need outside the United States. And so what did you see in a moment of stress? Actually, the Fed opened up swap lines to all the central banks that they work with, their most important operating partners, so Europe, Canada, Japan, etc., Switzerland. And they moved the liquidity window from weekly to daily, and they pounded the swap lines. So I don't know. I think that most people that kind of like, it's like a boy crying wolf. Maybe at some point somebody will be right, but you're going to lose so much money trying to take a point of view around this topic that it's more practical to just look at dollar flows. And dollar flows go up in moments of stress, not go down. And they go up in a distributed manner across the monetary plumbing of the world.
Although Palihapitiya was an early adopter of Bitcoin, he remains skeptical about its potential to replace the current financial system, citing the relatively small number of users compared to traditional banking. However, he still values Bitcoin and was one of its proponents in 2011 and 2012. Palihapitiya believes that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies can coexist with the traditional banking system, emphasizing the importance of both options.
I still believe that it's valuable. I was the earliest proponent of Bitcoin,
You got in early.
2011.
Yep.
2012. So I believe that there's a place for it in one's portfolio, but I just think connecting these dots misses the point. And I think the point is much, much bigger than a crypto off-ramp. The point is that we have a lot of systemic shocks that are building up in the system. We have broken a ton of the systems that cause the financial infrastructure and the world to work properly. And we are just starting to uncover how they're broken. So I think we need to focus our energy on that and dial down a little bit of the Bitcoin maxi stuff because it distracts from a really important set of topics that are more inclusive and actually touch 7 billion people. My point is put this in the who cares bucket and get back to the facts. Friedberg mentioned it. We have a debt ceiling problem that's in the offing. Sachs mentioned it. We have a commercial real estate crisis. We just talked about the fact that he didn't raise rates enough, nor did he cut enough. So we're in this weird middle path that Jay Powell we're talking about. So those are the facts on the ground that I think we should focus on because those will have implications to how people can borrow, start businesses, capitalize risk assets.
Palihapitiya suggests that for Bitcoin to be considered a legitimate alternative, more people need to adopt it. While there are currently around 100 million non-zero Bitcoin wallet holders globally, this is still a tiny portion of the world's 7 billion population. However, some experts believe that this is the moment Bitcoin was created for, as there is a confidence crisis in the banking system and Bitcoin offers an alternative. Palihapitiya has advised investors to include Bitcoin in their investment portfolios, stating that it provides diversification and an excellent long-term investment opportunity. I think it's important to have a little bit of Bitcoin in your portfolio.
It's the latter. I mean, I think that there was a rumor going around. I don't know how true it is that FTX was days away from getting a critical approval by the SEC to actually even further legitimize their US exchange before they went out of business. So I think Gensler had to pivot very hard from at a minimum being very pro FTX. And there's all kinds of stories about his interrelatedness with Sam and his family to very anti-bit or anti-crypto in general. That's clearly happened. But look, I think that this is like a lot of tin hatting, which I don't think is very productive. If you look at the total number of non-zero Bitcoin wallet addresses in the world.
At first glance, the recent banking crisis seems like the perfect catalyst for a Bitcoin price rally. Palihapitiya suggests that the recent banking crisis in the US and the increased demand for digital banking services have renewed interest in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. However, he notes that the lack of liquidity may have played a more significant role in the recent Bitcoin price rally than the crisis itself. Despite this, the future of Bitcoin remains uncertain. On this note, we conclude today's video. Do you share Palihapitiya's views on the relationship between the banking crisis and the rise of Bitcoin? If you found this information helpful, then like this video and subscribe to our channel. We will continue to bring you more updates in the future.